everyone, my name is Chelsea and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we're talking about books by Gino. So this is Pride Month. I know I've done a few videos related to that fact. I read queer books throughout the entire year, but basically I wanted to preface this just by saying that the reason I'm making this video here specifically is because my TBR has gotten derailed. I recently have been listening to all of the Gino middle grade queer books, and I finished the third one. So I just sort of decided, you know what, let's do a sort of almost like a review of this series of companion novels, because I think they are some of the best middle grade queer books that I have read, and I just need everybody to know about them. I feel like some people probably do, because the first one in this sort of, I want to call them, they're standalones, but they have characters that interconnect, so companion novels maybe. The first one is Melissa. This is a book that was published under a different name previously, because this is a story about a trans girl. Throughout the entire book, she knows exactly who she is, but through most of the story, she is using her previous name, because of the fact that she's not out and she's sort of figuring out how to tell people that she is a girl. I will say this is the lowest rated book that I gave out of the 3 companion novels. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars, and it's mostly because I think it's the shortest. This deals with her wanting to be Charlotte in Charlotte's Web. She's in 4th grade and they're doing these auditions for Charlotte's Web. And so it's a very gendered sort of production. The boys have to audition for the boys' parts, the girls have to audition for the girls' parts, and she really just wants to be a girl, not be a boy auditioning to be a girl. And so we have a lot of that sort of talk in here, which I did really appreciate. But once we get through the production of Charlotte's Web, there's one other scene at the end, and then the book is just over. I was just sort of expecting a little bit more of a conclusion almost. Not that this is necessarily a bad book or anything like that. I really enjoyed the look into it, especially because our characters in this story are in 4th grade. It feels very young, a lower middle grade age. And I really did appreciate a lot of the stuff. I was just hoping for a little bit more. We do have some instances of some homophobia, bullying, vomit, stuff like that here, so just keep that in mind going into the story. A little bit of stuff that could be microaggression, transphobia stuff, nothing too overt except for the bullying. That is a big part of the story, but I feel like it's a very good dip into some queer books and identities for middle grade readers, especially getting into trans identities as well. I really enjoyed that one. It is read by somebody who is not the author, and the reason I mention that is I've been listening to all of these on audio, and the next 2 books that we're going to talk about are actually read by the author, which they do an amazing job reading their stories. So it was one of those things where I wasn't aware that that was an option, and I guess for at least the first book, it was by somebody else, but the other 2 are read by the author. So moving out of Melissa, I read Rick, because that's the next one. This one was published in 2020, whereas Melissa, if I didn't mention it, was originally published in 2015. So again, a few years later. I thought Rick was going to be my favorite, and the next book, I gave them both 5 stars. I just absolutely love them. But really, I liked the fact that Rick picks up with Rick, who is a character that has a very minor role in the first book. So I liked that we sort of moved into a new character. I think that's part of the reason I feel like they're very companion novel-esque, because we are in the same setting where a couple years later now they're starting middle school, where their school starts middle school in 6th grade. So all of the characters that we knew before are pretty much now moved into 6th grade. Rick is now our new main character. We do get to see Melissa, which I really appreciated because of the way Melissa, the book, ended. I really just wanted more from it, and so the fact that we got to have her show up as well was really, really nice. But so now they're in middle school and we're basically starting this sort of like rainbow spectrum club there. The school's had it before, but obviously all of our characters are in 6th grade. They're just starting the school, so they're brand new to this club, which talks about the LGBTQIAP+ community. We get a lot of good talk about all these different things like that going on, like what do these identities mean? What do the letters mean? So it broadens the knowledge that you get from Melissa in Rick. It sort of opens up the queer community more. And this whole story is about Rick figuring out his identity because he thinks at the beginning that he's probably a straight cis white guy. And so throughout the story, he's figuring out if that actually is him. He's questioning identities, trying to figure out where he would fit. And I really like to talk about being asexual and aromantic that they have in here. He has a lot of family in here too, whereas I feel like Melissa, we did have her family as well, but like there's a little bit more of a focus on his family for the good points and the bad points that they have, in especially in relation to him questioning himself and his identity. This one also deals a little bit with theater stuff as well, because they're going to put on a sort of like talent show as a fundraiser for the club. So I really appreciated that. So we have this sort of theme that goes throughout the stories of the theater, as well as the different queer identities and things like that. I just really, really loved this one so much, like 5 out of 5 stars. And again, like I said, I did listen to it on audio with the author reading it. And then the third one that I actually just finished recently is Green. So this is a character that shows up in the second book as they go into middle school. It is a character that was in the same grade as them. So I want to say the characters have moved up into 7th grade now. It does mention that it is like 1 year later, and they are non-binary. They introduce they, them pronouns in Rick, and obviously it moves through the story. This one is also read by the author, which again, I just really, really appreciate. And in this one, we do then get into more of like being non-binary, being on the trans spectrum, what that means for bodies and hormones and things like that. It's not, again, that's not like the huge main focus of the story, but I did like that it had more of those details. In Rick, Green is just non-binary. You don't really get to know too much about what gender they were assigned at birth, that kind of thing. We do get that more in Green, which I want to say at first I was a little unsure about how that was going to affect what I felt about the story, only because I really liked how in Rick, we didn't have a, this is what they were assigned previously and now they're non-binary. Like we just did not have any sort of knowledge on that information. I do want to say I'm pretty sure based on the author, this is a little bit more own voices in a way, because we do get a little bit more in depth about the biology of Green as a person in relation to being non-binary, as well as just their body and how they feel about their body. And so I actually still really appreciate it. I gave this book 5 stars. This one also has a little bit more figuring out romantic feelings in a way. It's not a romance for sure. It is definitely still like a middle grade coming of age type of thing. But the first 2 books didn't really have romantic relationships come and play a part necessarily. Melissa was in 4th grade. There was no romantic things at all. And then as we go into Rick, Rick is definitely more about queer characters as a whole, because we get introduced to a lot of the people that come to the Rainbow Spectrum meetings. We do have like, oh, these 2 characters are girlfriends, or, you know, that kind of stuff. But Rick especially is more interested in the potential asexual, aromantic side. And then we get into Green. They're a year older, and Green is definitely having some potential feelings, crushes on a boy. And I just really liked that we did have another sort of element that progressed here. I feel like every single book that I read, these 3, just sort of like increase the amount of information that you get about being queer and different things like that, especially because the kids grow up as we get through these books. Like if you read them in order, so by the time we get to Green, they're more like 13 or so, and they're definitely potentially having those sort of hormonal crushes and feelings and things like that. And I really, really appreciated it. This one, again, is going to have those theater elements as well. The school is putting on The Wizard of Oz for their spring musical. And so, again, we do have the, like, being on stage and auditioning for parts and the backstage work and building sets. And so again, as somebody who was a theater kid in high school and stuff, I really did like that that is another sort of theme that has been moving forward. The second book was more of a talent show than an actual play and stuff, but I liked that not only are we having these characters that we get to follow as they grow up, and we get the queerness of all of them and how they come into play, because every single person so far has been different from each other, which is great. I like that we have that sort of theater through line through these books, so you get a little bit of that in every single one. I'm not trying to give any spoilers to these books, so these are just like the basic main themes that you're getting, which I really appreciate. And like I said at the beginning, I absolutely loved these books, which is why I decided I needed to mention it. They basically derailed my entire TBR. I gave the first one 4 stars and then just continued, and I've loved the last two like so much. I'm so glad I read these. Like I mentioned with Melissa having a little bit of like transphobia, homophobia, bullying stuff, we do have some more of that throughout the books. I just wanted to mention that because I think I forgot to on the individual books. But we have a little bit of like acephobia type of stuff in Rick, as well as the more like bullying jerk best friend type of thing, because Rick is actually a friend of the bully from Melissa in that book and stuff like that. So he's really trying to figure out who he is, but also who he is without being connected to this guy who is not the best. He really is a bully. So we do get to see that bullying type of stuff throughout, a little bit of homophobia and transphobia. A lot of that kind of stuff that pops up is because of like that one kid. I want to say I feel like we had less homophobia, transphobia type of stuff in Green. We have very supportive families throughout this, which is great. But I think because of that, we had a little bit less of this stuff that would be a little bit maybe triggering, or the content warnings need to be aware of for the stuff that was in the first 2 books, which is good. I think this last book was a little bit more about Green and who they are as a person and figuring out relationships and stuff like that, versus figuring out identities as much and having to deal with people seeing them question, like they know who they are. And so really that's all I wanted to share, is the fact that I think these are amazing middle grade queer stories that all have a little bit of difference in them for a middle grade audience or even older, obviously. I just really enjoyed these. They're perfect to read throughout any time of the year, but especially during Pride Month if you're looking for really good quick reads. I want to say each book probably on audio took me like an hour and a half-ish, because I listen on 2 times speed. So no matter what, you'd be able to finish them in about 3, maybe 4 hours at the most. They're very quick to read, and I just really love them and appreciate them, and I now want more things from Gino. So that is going to be it from me today. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up to let me know. Subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more videos. I do have videos coming out Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, so I will see you then. Bye.